everyone. I'm Alexis. Today we are doing animating memorable characters that communicate without words.
Hi, my name is Atsuko Fukuyama. I was in charge of animating Yorda in Eco and Agro in Shadow of the Colossus. I'm the lead animator on Last Labyrinth. I can't speak English, so I have asked Alexis to help me today.
And hi, I'm Alexis. I'm the technical artist, and I'm also a member of the animation team on Last Labyrinth. And weirdly enough, I've spent my entire career in Japan. I've been by Atsuko's side the better part of the last 5 years, and have made it my job to facilitate her work the best I can. I'm not a professional translator. I'm an animator. So if I have a little bit of problems up here, don't get mad. But she didn't want to be up here alone, so that's why we didn't do the more like standard headset thing. So I know her better than most people, so I'm going to do my best today. Okay, as Last Labyrinth is our company's first original title, I'm pretty sure you have no idea what it is. So it's a VR escape the room game. The player starts the game strapped to a wheelchair, unable to move. And the only thing they can do is they have a laser pointer attached to their head, and they can use that to point things out in the room to this mysterious girl that is trapped with them. Her name is Katya. She speaks in a language, but it's not really anything that anybody in the entire world could ever understand. She can understand if the player nods their head or shakes their head. And the player has to work together with Katya to solve puzzles and escape. The original prototype for the game debuted at Tokyo Game Show back in 2016, and production on the title actually started in April of 2018. We plan to release this summer, hopefully. And our team consists of 18 people, but the original prototype only had one artist on it. Well, we brought a trailer to give you an idea. So that was the trailer. So today we're going to explain a little on Atsuko's thought processes behind the characters that she animates and what she thinks is important when it comes to implementation of those animations. We will also talk briefly about the rig functions and tools I've implemented to make animation as painless as possible for her. We'll leave time at the end for questions, so be thinking of them while we talk. So what do we mean by a nonverbal NPC? A nonverbal NPC, in our case, doesn't mean that they can't talk. It just means that they speak in a language that the player can't understand. As you could tell from the song earlier, Katya doesn't speak a language that exists. It's a made-up language. If the player can't understand them, that means the only way the NPC can communicate is through their movements and actions. Atsuko's been in the Japanese game industry for many years and has made a career of animating nonverbal NPCs who the player ends up having an emotional connection with. When thinking of the gameplay concepts for Last Labyrinth, our company president and producer knew he could trust Atsuko to be the lead animator on a game that hinges on the emotional connection with a nonverbal character. It's part of the reason he actually chose this direction for the game. I will be translating for Atsuko for the next little bit, so when I say I mean her. Okay? Translating mode.
はい、アレクシスより、非言語 NPC の説明がありましたが、イコのヨルダやワンダと巨像のアグロ、そして制作中のラストラビリンスのカティアと言います。カティアも非言語 NPC になります。でご存知の方も多いと思いますけれども、イコはソニーコンピューターエンターテインメントにより、2001年にプレイステーション2で発売されました。で発売されたアクションアドベンチャーゲームです。でワンダと巨像も同じくソニーコンピューターエンターテインメントにより2005年にプレイステーション2で発売されたアクションアドベンチャーゲームです。イコのヨルダは、私にとってとても大切なキャラクターで、初めて一人のキャラクターをこうじっくり作り上げる経験をしました。
So Alexis just explained what we mean by nonverbal NPC. Yorda from Ico, Agra from Shadow of the Colossus, and Katya from our current title, Last Labyrinth, are all examples of nonverbal characters. Many of you already know this, but Ico and Shadow of the Colossus are Sony computer entertainment games that were released on the PS2 in 2001 and 2005. They are both action-adventure games. Yorda from Ico is a very important character to me because she was the first character I got to experience meticulously making from the ground up.
イコに参加する以前にも別のゲーム会社で数タイトルの 3D アニメーターとしての経験がありました。ですが、イコの制作現場はそれらとは全く違うものでした。
Before working on Ico, I had worked on several other titles as a 3D animator, but the development floor of Ico was a completely different experience.
当時ゲームに登場する NPC は、ストーリーの説明をしてくれるキャラクターだったり、アイテムをくれるキャラクターであったり、ヒロインであっても印象的な位置づけでゲームプレイヤーとの絡みは少ないものが多かったです。
At the time, NPCs that appeared in games were characters who explained parts of the story or gave the player items. Even if they were the heroine of the game, they were more of a symbolic presence and did not have much involvement with the player throughout the course of the game.
そんな中、イコのヒロインのヨルダの描かれ方は全く違いました。ストーリーを説明するわけでもなければ、話をしている言葉も理解できない。でゲームクリアのためのアイテムを渡してくれるわけでもない。けれど、プレイヤーとの絆を深め、心を交わしていく存在でした。
But the heroine of Yorda was completely different. She wasn't there to explain the story. The player can't understand her language. She wasn't there to give some item to clear the game either. She was a presence who the player would feel a bond with.
ディレクターの上田さんは、以降単なる NPC としてではなく、ゲームの空間の中で生きた存在として描こうとしていました。そして関わるスタッフ全員がそこに費やす、労力を惜しみませんでした。
The director of Ico, Mr. Ueda, didn't want Yorda to be a simple NPC, but wanted to portray her as a living being that lived in the world of Ico. All of the staff members who were involved spared no effort to make Yorda that type of character.
で今では当たり前の話に感じるかもしれませんが、当時一体の NPC を作り込むのに制作の時間を大きく使うというのは珍しいことでした。今思い返しても初プロジェクトでその企画を通し最後までブレずにそれらを完成させた上田さんのパワーはすごかったなと思います。
It might go without saying nowadays, but back then it was rare to use that kind of development time on a single NPC. Thinking back on it now, it is a testament to how amazing Mr. Ueda is. That was his first project, and he was able to get that plan approved and bring it to life without straying from his vision.
私のキャラクターアニメーションのスタイルはイコとワンダと共存で学んだ経験が基礎となっています。
My character animation style is based on what I learned during my time making Ico and Shadow of the Colossus.
現在私が制作中のラストラビリンスはゲームデザインをあまた代表の高橋博道が手掛けています。
The game design of the game we're currently working on, Last Labyrinth, was created by the president of Amata, Hiromichi Takahashi.
でラストラビリンスもイコと同じように謎の少女カティアとプレイヤーとの非言語コミュニケーションが重要なゲームコンセプトになっています。
Similar to Eco, Last Labyrinth's game concept revolves around the nonverbal communication between a mysterious girl and the player.
プレイヤーとカティアの協力関係でゲームが進み、言葉を交わさなくても徐々にお互いが大切に思えてくる、そういう関係が体験できるゲームです。
The game progresses through the player's cooperation with Katya. Even though the player cannot exchange words with Katya, the two of them grow to become important presences to each other over the course of the game. Last Labyrinth is a game where you can experience that sort of slowly built relationship.
さらに VR なので、少女カティアとの関係はより近く感じられる存在になります。
On top of that, because Last Labyrinth is a VR title, Katya becomes a presence the player can feel an even closer connection to.
私は、カティアをゲーム空間の中で生きた存在として表現しないというプレッシャーと、久々に一人のキャラクターをじっくり作り、育てることができるという期待でスタートしました。
I started this project feeling the pressure of needing to make Katya into a living being inside the world of Last Labyrinth, as well as looking forward to creating a character from the ground up, as it had been a while for me.
NPC をゲーム空間の中で生きた存在として描くというのは本当に難しく時間のかかる作業です。特に非言語 NPC でのコミュニケーションとなると、プレイヤーは NPC の仕草や表情、視線や行動で、NPC の意図を理解しようとするので、NPC の動作が不自然であれば、プレイヤーは相手が生き物でないと感じてしまいます。
Bringing an NPC character to life as a living being inside a game world is a difficult task that takes a great deal of time. The player will try to understand the intentions of the NPC through their mannerisms, expressions, eye movement, and actions, especially if you intend to communicate non-verbally. If the NPC moves unnaturally, the player will lose their immersion and stop viewing the NPC as a living being.
私たちはプレイヤーがゲームの中で NPC と出会い、心を交わせる存在になるようアニメーションで命を吹き込むのが仕事です。それにはどのような仕事があり、どのようなことに気を配りながら制作しているのか順に話していきます。
Our job as animators is to breathe life into our characters so that when the player meets the NPC in the game, they feel like it's someone they can connect to. I will talk about the process we go through to animate these sorts of characters.
まずツールでのキャラクターアニメーションの作成について、ラストラビリンスでは、アニメーションは手付けで作成していて、ツールはマヤを使用しています。モーションキャプチャー導入もただいま検討中ですが、今のところは手付けのみでやっています。
First, let's talk about the animation inside of the DCC tool. For Last Labyrinth, we are doing hand-keyed animation in Maya. We are also considering using motion capture in the future, but we are sticking to hand-keyed animation for the time being.
キャラクターアニメーション作業では、非言語 NPC がプレイヤーにとってどのような存在なのかをまず考えます。
When I make an animation, I think about what kind of presence I want the nonverbal NPC to be to the player.
イコのヨルダであれば、プレイヤーにとって守ってあげたいと思える存在。神秘的でつかみどころがない感じ。でワンダと巨像のアグロであれば、いつも一緒にいる、信頼できる相棒のような存在。ラストラビリンスのカティアであれば、自分を助けてくれる不思議な少女といった感じです。
In Yorda from Eco's case, I wanted the player to want to protect her. I wanted her to be an enigmatic figure that you can't quite figure out. In Agro from Shadow of the Colossus' case, I wanted the player to feel like she was a partner who they could trust and would always be by their side. And for Katya, I wanted the player to feel like she was a mysterious girl who would save them.
これらのキャラクターがどのような仕草や表情をすればプレイヤーを引きつけられるかを考え、動きやポーズを選択していきます。そしてどんな動きやポーズにするか決めたら、あとはそのキャラクターになりきってアニメーションを作成していきます。
For each character, I think about which mannerisms or expressions they can do that will make the player feel a particular way, and I choose my poses or actions from there. After choosing the pose or action, all that is left is to become the character and create the animation.
こちらは、カティアが箱を動かすアニメーションです。重そうに引っ張るアニメーションにしました。
This is an animation of Katya pulling a box. I animated the box to seem heavy.
カティアは10歳くらいの女の子です。腕力があるタイプでもありません。そんな彼女が腰の高さほどある大きな箱を動かすには、彼女自身の体重をかけて動かすに違いありません。
Katya is a young girl, around 10 years old. She isn't particularly strong. For a girl like her to move a wooden box that goes up to her hips, it would take a lot of strength. She would have to use her body weight for leverage.
そういうふうに状況から動きを決めたら、あとはその状況に置かれたカティアになりきって作成していきます。
After figuring out the movements from the situation, the only thing left is to become Katya myself and create the animation from them.
こちらのハッチを開けるアニメーションも同じようなプロセスで作成しました。
I went through a similar process with this hatch opening animation.
重い鉄板を体全体で持ち上げたら、持ち上げたところで手を鉄板の裏に回したいんですが、片手では鉄板を支えきれないと思い、そこで足で鉄板を支えるだろうと思い、足を使いました。
If a small girl like Katya was to lift a heavy iron plate, she would need to flip her hand over at some point, but wouldn't be able to hold the plate up with just one hand, so she would need to pull the plate in place with her leg.
ハッチが開いた時にバーンと大きい音が鳴るので、それに驚く仕草というのを少し入れてみたんですけれども、あまりうまく表現できてないです。でもまた、次に触ったらもうちょっと良くなると思います。
After the hatch drops to the other side, it makes a loud bang noise. So I tried to have Katya be surprised at the sound, but I haven't quite captured it right yet. Next time I work on this scene, it will look better.
これもそうですね。レバーを動かすアニメーションです。
It's the same with this motion. This is a lever animation.
これはもっと重そうに動かすかちょっと迷ったんですけれども、ゲーム中カティアがこのレバーを動かす回数が結構多いので、アニメーションの時間が長いとプレイヤーのストレスになると思い、今の速度にしました。
I wasn't sure if I wanted to make this motion feel a little heavier or not, but since Katya has to move these levers so many times, I felt like it would be stressful to the player. If it was too heavy, they wouldn't be able to, they'd be bored. So I went with the speed.
重さの表現はためを使ったり体の動きの速度を遅くしたりと、するので、それだけアニメーションの時間が長くなります。ゲームの内容や操作性も考えて、アニメーションを決めるのがベストかなと思っています。
To create weight, we use holds and reduce the movement speed of the body. Doing so increases the length of the animation. I think it's best to choose our animations with the gameplay in mind.
このように、どのアニメーションでも、状況とそのなりきりで、作成しています。で、重いものを操作するアクションはカティアの子供っぽさや一生懸命な姿をプレイヤーに印象をつけるのに印象的です。
I make all of my animations through a combination of the current situation and becoming the character. Operating such heavy objects communicates both Katya's childlikeness and the fact that she is doing her best to the player and leaves an impression on them.
で、次は決まったシーケンスで流れる演出的なアニメーションを例に話します。ラストラビリンスでは、プレイヤーの選択によってカティアを危険な目に遭わせてしまう場合があります。
I will talk about the animations that take in a predetermined sequence now. In Last Labyrinth, Katya can be put into dangerous situations based on the player's decisions.
この場面ではカティアの上に重い吊り天井が落ちてくるシーンのアニメーションです。
In this scene, there is a large hanging ceiling that falls towards Katya.
通常こういった演出シーンでは、カメラワークで臨場感を煽ったりすると思いますが、VR の場合はカメラがプレイヤーの視点になるので、カメラでカットを切り替えたり、決まったアングルから映像を映したりすることができません。よくやる、あとはカメラでごまかしちゃおうというようなのが通用しないのがアニメーターにとっては苦しいところです。
Normally, for these types of scenes, you would use camera work to increase the sense of presence, but in VR, the camera is completely controlled by where the player is looking. We cannot make cuts or have the camera stay at a specific angle. It's very difficult for animators to animate in VR because we can't hide things with the camera.
カメラ演出がない分、画面の情報量で補わないとなんとなく寂しい画面になってしまいます。エフェクトや音楽が入ると、迫力は増すんですけれども、 キャラクターアニメーションもこうわざとよろけたりとかこけたりさせたりしてこう動きの情報量がこうできるだけ増すように心がけています。
Because there is no camera work, the amount of information on the screen decreases and the scene can feel incomplete or lonely. Adding effects and sound combat this some, but doing things like purposely having the characters stagger and fall increases the amount of visual information. I keep this in mind when animating.
次はリグのお話です。イコやワンダと巨像の時は専門のリガーなどはいなかったので、リグも自分たちで作成していました。そのキャラクターのアニメーションをつける人がリグもつけるみたいな感じでしたけれども、それはごく普通の作りのものでした。
Next, let's talk about rigs. During Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, we didn't have a rigging specialist, so we had to make the rigs ourselves. Whoever animated the character needed to make the rig. That was normal at the time.
ラストラビリンスではアレクシスがリグやマヤの便利ツールを作ってくれているので、おかげで私はキャラクターの演技だけに集中でき、アニメーション作業は、時間はぐっと短くなりました。次はラストラビリンスのリグについてアレクシスの方から説明します。
Luckily for me, in Last Labyrinth, Alexis is making our rigs and making tools for us. Thanks to her, I was able to focus on the character performance, and the amount of time needed to make each animation has decreased. Alexis will now explain a little about the Last Labyrinth rig to you. I'm me again! So when this project started, Atsuko was the only animator. As she has a very specific style of animation, and the one thing the producer and director really wanted to do was give her the time to bring that out. I got assigned to the project shortly after her and was told to become her dedicated TA and help with animation when I had time. Up until this point at Amatsa, the TA position didn't even exist, so it was really cool to see that on my business card. Atsuko actually has a reputation at work for staying later than everyone. My goal was to make her life easier so she could go home on time. Well, I made her life easier, but she still doesn't go home on time. So I built the Last Labyrinth rig, especially with Atsuko's animation style in mind. Our rig uses a lot of space switching capabilities so that she can move it in the exact way she needs to at any time she wants to. In Japan, rigs that have switching functions are actually quite uncommon. She'd never actually used one up until this point, and so this was a first for our studio. As you'll hear shortly, movement animations are extremely important to Atsuko. Up until this point, when she would make a run animation, she would animate the character moving forward in space, duplicate the feet controls, do a bunch of constraints. It was a horrible, horrible process. I don't remember it. It was bad. That was time she could have been animating. I just implemented a simple space switch and space matching system so that all she had to do was press this button, and it was done. So now, and that way she could just focus on animation. She also likes to animate her hands in IK mode, but prefers them to follow the shoulders rather than the torso. Think of it kind of between global and local space. I like doing global animation, so I just made a couple of space switches that made it so everybody can work in their preferred styles. Another animator has since joined our team, so now we've added FK to the rig as well. I know this is standard for a lot of companies, but for us it was a first. I tried to keep the controller design as simple and as unintrusive as possible. I wanted our animators to be able to preview their animations and not need to turn the NURBS cards on and off every 5 seconds. I also tried to combine functions where possible, so they would only have to think about a few controls and wouldn't have to go into the channel box much. I tried to make sure that they had abilities to control individual things as well. There's a sub-version of each controller in case anyone wants to make a sweeping change to any animation as well. So an example of combining the controls would be this foot rig. The feet have a single control that you just move in each direction, and that controls the foot roll, foot turn, and toe bend. Katya does a lot of running in Last Labyrinth, so this was very useful and saved us a lot of time. Facial animation is an extremely important part to a nonverbal character, so I spent a lot of time trying to make a rig that would make it easy for Atsuko to animate Katya's face. I knew our animation team was going to be very small, so I wanted our animators to be able to whip things up as quickly as possible. The same philosophies from the other parts of our rig were used here as well. The controls are simple, so they're not distracting, and they're easy to keep track of. We don't have blend shapes available for Katya, so I had to brute force a lot of this rig, like a lot. It's all done through nodes. And there's a lot of sub-controllers on it to control each individual bone, but pretty much no one uses those. For example, when you move Katya's eyeballs, like you've seen in this loop here, the eyeball bones adjust accordingly, so she only has to mess with one control. Again, you can go back and make them, but nobody does. She really believes in becoming her character when she animates, and using a rig that isn't suited to her gets in the way of that because she has to think about the rig. I never want her to feel like she needs to make a scene-specific rig. I'll let her keep talking about animation now.
そんな、私の要望わがままをたくさん聞いてもらってできたリグで一つ一つのアニメーションに対してキャラクターの性格を足していくようなイメージで作っていきますが、アニメーションの素材だけでは、ゲーム中のキャラクターの存在感は作れないと思っています。
So using the rig that Alexis made completely custom to me, listening to all of my demands, she said that, not me. I make each individual animation one by adding the character's personality to the motion. But animation clips alone do not make a character feel alive in a game.
ゲーム内でキャラクターが歩いたり走ったり、何かに興味を示して近寄ったりですとか、プレイヤーの行動に反応したりと NPC の意思や、感情を表現できて初めてゲーム内に存在しているように感じてもらえるキャラクターになります。
During the game, when the character runs and walks or shows interest in something and moves towards it or reacts to something the player does, it shows they have a will of their own and feelings. It's then that they become a character whose presence in the game is something that you can feel.
それらを、実現するには、キャラクター制御をどういったものにするか計画し、ディレクターやエンジニアとともに進めていきます。
In order to bring that sort of character to life, we need to plan out the character control and move forward together with the director and engineers.
イコやワンダと共同で行っていたキャラクター制御のコンセプトをもとに、ラストラビリンスで行ったキャラクター制御についてご紹介していきます。移動制御、視線制御、興味行動制御、プレイヤー指示での行動。
We used some basic concepts of character control from my experiences on Eco and Shadow of the Colossus and implemented our own versions of them in Last Labyrinth. Those concepts are movement control, line of sight control, interest-driven action control, and action from player input.
キャラクター制御でまず最初に取り掛かったのが移動制御です。NPC はコントローラーで操作できないので、歩いたり走ったり停止したりするにもプログラムでの制御が必要です。私はプログラムはできないので、どういう挙動にするか仕様を考え、エンジニアにそれらを伝えて実装してもらいます。
Movement control is the first type of character control we worked on. NPCs cannot be controlled with a controller, so their walks, runs, stops, etc. need to be controlled by a program. I can't program, so I need to think of exactly what kind of behavior I want implemented and ask the engineer to implement it for me.
キャラクター移動はプレイヤーが最も多く目にするところで、挙動が不自然だとプレイヤーにストレスを与えるだけでなく、没入感も損なってしまいます。
Character movement is what the player will look at the most, so if their behavior is unnatural, the player will not only feel stressed, but they will lose their immersion.
カティアの移動は立ち、前方歩き、前方走り、後方歩き、横歩き、ターンなどをスムーズに行き来できるように、これらの移動関連のアニメーションをブレンドした繊維を作成し、速度、横移動の速度、方向を掛け合わせた結果の動きがつなぎ目なく再生できる仕組みにしました。
For Katya's movements, standing, walking forward, running forward, etc., animations were blended using transitions to make her movements look smooth. Using combinations of parameters like speed, strafe speed, and direction, we were able to seamlessly move between animations.
移動開始の方向とゴール地点までの距離とその時の視線方向によって再生されるアニメーションが決定されるようにしています。
The animation that will be played is decided using the direction of the character is beginning to move in, the distance to the goal, as well as the direction they are looking.
カティアが後方に移動する時もカティアの視線がどこにあるかで再生されるアニメーションが違います。
Even when Katya moves backwards, the animation that is played will change based on the direction she is looking in.
足滑りが起こらないようにカティアのルート移動はすべてアニメーションで作成した移動量が適用されています。
In order to prevent foot sliding, Katya's root movement is completely applied from the movement amount in the animation itself.
移動ルートの経路探索にもゲームエンジンの機能を拡張して使用しています。床の状態、オブジェクトの配置情報を検知して移動ルートを自動計算してくれます。これで加速減速率や減速範囲、最高速度などを調整することができます。
The route lookup the movement route uses is also implemented based on an expanded function of the engine we are using. It automatically calculates the route based on the current condition of the ground and detection of the object placement. With this, we can adjust things like acceleration and deceleration ratios and deceleration radiuses.
調整したパラメータは移動セッティングファイルとして複数保存でき、場所や、状況によって移動セッティングファイルを使い分けることができます。
The adjusted parameters are saved as a movement setting file, and we are able to save multiple versions of these files. We can change which movement settings we use based on the place or conditions.
ここまで実装して私たちは大きな壁にぶつかりました。
After implementing this much, we reached a large wall.
ラストラビリンスのカティアは、オブジェクトを操作したりするので、オブジェクトの前の決められたポイントにぴったり停止する必要があるんですけれども、カティアが決められたポイントにぴったり止まれないという問題がありました。そのズレは大きい時は20センチくらいありました。
In Last Labyrinth, Katya needs to be able to stop at specific points in order to interact with specific objects. But with our original implementation, she was unable to do that. At its largest misalignment, Katya was 20 centimeters away from her target.
これはカティアのルート移動をすべてアニメーションの移動量で行っているために生じる弊害でした。
This was because Katya's route animation was completely applied using the movement amount from her animation.
でそこで、決められた停止ポイントの近くにカティアが到達したら、ルート移動をプログラムに任し、徐々にポイントを合わせて停止させるという処理を入れたんですけれども、どうしても足滑りが気になりました。特に VR ではキャラクターが至近距離にいるので違和感が大きかったです。
After realizing this, we tried switching to a programmed route animation after Katya got within a specific distance from her target, but the foot sliding was still too apparent. Especially in VR, where the character is at point-blank range, the foot sliding can cause a sense of unease.
でそうして考えたのがショートロコモーションと名付けた次の仕様でした。
So we thought of something we call short locomotion.
このシステムはキャラクターの移動や、停止方向を状態によってプログラムで可変させる仕組みです。1、2歩の短い移動から停止までの、動作を移動方向と停止方向ごとにアニメーションを用意し、状況に応じてそれらをプログラムで動かします。
This system allows us to change the character's route movement and orientation by program, depending on the conditions. We prepare short 1 to 2 step movement animations that stop in each stopping direction, and the program chooses which one to play and in which direction to move it in.
この図は、移動方向と停止方向を表した図です。
These charts show how we choose the animation.
ちょっと何を言ってるかよくわからないかもしれないんですけれども、私たちが欲しかったのは半径30センチから40センチくらいの円の中をカティアがどの距離でもどの方向でも足滑りなしで停止できる仕組みが欲しかったです。
Maybe it's a little hard to follow what we're saying, but we wanted Katya to not be able or to be able to stop in any direction within a 30 to 40 centimeter radius of where she was without her feet sliding.
ルートの移動が 0.05 から35センチの間で可変するので、当然そのままでは足の滑りが発生してしまいます。足滑り解消のために足を固定する、足滑り解消のために足を固定するフットロックをここにだけ実装しています。
We can change the route movement freely between 0.05 centimeters and 35 centimeters, so the feet will end up sliding because of this. We implemented a foot lock system here to prevent sliding.
0.05 センチの移動でも35センチの移動でも同じアニメーションを使用するので、どちらにも似合うようにアニメーションを作成するのがなかなか大変で、かなり原始的なやり方で調整していったんですけれども、この実装でカティアが停止ポイントにぴったり止まれないという問題は解消されました。
Whether or not Katya is moving 0.05 centimeters or 35 centimeters in space, she will use the same animation clip So it took a lot of time and trouble and actually some brute force to get it to look right. But once we did, Katya was able to stop at a specific point and we were able to fix the problem.
この実装が入ったのがもう今年に入ってからなので、去年の東京ゲームショウでは、残念ながらカティアの足が滑ってしまってました。
The implementation of this was finished this year, so sadly Katya's feet slid during the Tokyo Game Show version.
すいません。
Sorry about that.
次に視線制御です。非言語でのコミュニケーションに視線制御というのはとても重要です。視線がどこを向いているかで NPC が何を考えているのか、プレイヤーに伝えることができ、それは NPC に意思があるかのように見せることができます。
Next is line of sight control. For nonverbal communication, the line of sight is extremely important. You can convey what the NPC is thinking to the player just by using line of sight. And you can also show the NPC to have a will of their own using it.
カティアの視線制御は次の3つのうち優先が高いものを見る仕組みになっています。プレイヤーがポイントした先を見る、興味がある対象を見る、定期的にプレイヤーを見る。
In Katya's case, she looks at the most important of one of the three following things: the point the player has pointed to, whatever has Katya's interest, or she sporadically looks at the player.
プレイヤーがポイントした先を見るのは、カティアがプレイヤーの行動を気にかけているという仕草の演出ができます。で、興味の対象を見るのは、カティアの自立した、意思を演出できます。で、定期的にプレイヤーを見るのは、プレイヤーとのコミュニケーションを演出できます。
By looking where the player points, we can show that Katya is paying attention to what the player is doing. By looking at things that catch her interest, we can show that Katya has her own independence. And by looking at the player, we can show her trying to communicate with the player.
対象物を見ている時のカティアの目と頭と上半身はフルボディアイ系で動いています。これもゲームエンジンのアセットを拡張して使用しています。
When looking at a target, Katya's eyes, head, and upper body are moved using full body IKs. The IK system that we are using is an expansion on a pre-existing engine asset.
IK パラメータの調整はアニメーターの方で行っていますが、各パラメータの関係性がかなり複雑になってきて、エンジニアさんが隣にいないと調整が難しくなってしまいました。もう少しシンプルにできたらと思うんですが、実現したいことを追加していくとどうしても複雑になっていくので悩ましいです。
The IK parameter adjustments are made by the animators directly, but the relationship between the parameters is so complex that it became difficult to do them or to adjust them without an engineer literally right next to you. It would have been nice had we been able to make them simpler, but things just kept needing to be added on, and it made to meet our implementation requests.
興味物に対しては見るだけでなく、配置物や壁などに興味レベルとアプローチ半径というのを設定でき、興味が高いものへカティアが移動します。また一度消化した興味にはクールダウン時間が設けられ、興味対象が他の興味対象に移るようになっています。これらが興味行動の制御です。
Katya doesn't just look at things that interest her. She also moves towards those things that interest her and has interest levels and approach radiuses for each item and wall in the room. Once Katya has shown interest in something, a cooldown time will trigger and her interest target will change to another item. This is interest-driven action control.
これはイコやワンダと共存で行っていた方法と同じような仕組みで実装しています。イコやワンダと共存の時はここら辺の仕様は上田さんが決めていたので、私はあまり関わっていませんでした。ラストラビリンスではディレクターとエンジニアとアニメーターとで意見を出し合って仕様を決めています。
The system we are using for this is very similar to the system that was used in Eco and Shadow of the Colossus. For Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, Mr. Ueda decided the specifics of the systems, and I wasn't very involved. But this time, for Last Labyrinth, the director, engineers, and animators exchange opinions and decide the specifications together.
興味対象への NPC のリアクションは自発的行動を演出できます。プレイヤーの命令だけじゃない行動を取ることで NPC が自ら感じて行動を起こしているように見せる意図があります。
The NPC's reaction to the interest target can help us to show spontaneous action. Having the NPC move not just according to the player's orders allows us to show the NPC thinking for themselves and taking action.
キャラクター制御の最後になりますけれども、プレイヤーの指示での行動についてのお話です。ラストラビリンスではプレイヤーがポイントしたものに対してカティアが近づいて これと指をさしてプレイヤーに問いかけるような仕草をします。プレイヤーも頭の動きでイエスノを返すことができ、それによってカティアの行動が変わります。
The last form of character control we are using is action from player input. In Last Labyrinth, when the player points to an object, Katya comes close, points to the object, and seems to ask, "This?" The player then nods yes or shakes no, and Katya responds accordingly.
これはプロデューサーの高橋がゲームデザインを企画した最初から入っていて、プロトタイプが作成された時からありました。
This is our producer, Mr. Takahashi's game design, and was part of Last Labyrinth since the prototype days.
これはカティアとプレイヤーとの唯一具体的なコミュニケーションでとても重要な動作となっています。
This is the one and only concrete form of communication between Katya and the player during the game, so it's a very important movement.
対象物にこれとカティアが指差しするアクションを対象物の数分カティアのアニメーションを作成するのはちょっと時間的に厳しいので、どの対象物にも同じアニメーションが使えるようにしたいと思いました。でそこでカティアが対象物の前に移動してきて停止する前に対象物とプレイヤーとの位置関係を確認し、カティアの停止する方向を決め、カティアが指し示す腕は IK で対象物の方向に向くようにしています。で目、頭、上半身は、視線制御で、視線制御 IK でプレイヤーの方向に向けるという仕様にしました。
Making individual animations for each object that Katya points to while asking this would be a difficult task time-wise, so we wanted to be able to reuse the animation for any object in the game. Katya needed to move to the object, stop in front of it, check the positions of both the player and herself, then decide which direction to face. We decided to drive the arm that Katya points with an IK to point towards the target object, and Katya's eyes, head, upper body, and line of sight are driven by an IK to point to the player.
こうすることでカティアが指差しするアクションは一つのアニメーションをどの対象物にも使えるようになりました。
This made it so that we could use a single pointing animation for any object in the game.
この動きが機械的にならないようにするのに苦労しました。カティアと対象物とプレイヤーとの位置関係によっては今でもちょっと不自然に見える時があるので、リリースまでには何とか改善したいと思っています。
We had a lot of trouble keeping this animation from seeming robotic. Depending on the positions of the player, the target object, and Katya, even now there are still some situations that look unnatural. We hope to improve upon them somehow before the game releases.
以上がラストラビリンスで行っている主なキャラクター制御になります。こうやって地味にも見える処理を一つ一つ丁寧に追加していくことで、キャラクターの挙動に情報量が追加され、無機質なキャラクターから生きたキャラクターへと変化していきます。
And this is basically how we are making the animation in Last Labyrinth. By adding seemingly simple or even boring processes on top of each other one by one, the amount of information conveyed through the character behavior increases, and the character that seemed inorganic at first can change into a living character.
3D ツールで作るアニメーションの内容も重要ですが、完成してしまえばそれ以上になることは、それ以上に変化することはないです。でキャラクター制御があるから非言語 NPC がゲーム内で生きているように思えてきます。映画やアニメーションの映像ではできないゲームだからこそできる表現じゃないかなと思っています。
The animation you make inside the DCC tool is of course important, but once it's finished, there's no way to change it past that. It's because we have things like character control systems that we can make nonverbal characters that feel alive in games. This is something that film or animation can't do, and it's something that can only be done through games, in my mind.
キャラクターを作り上げていく作業に苦労も多いんですけれども、自分が手がけたNPC とプレイヤーがコミュニケーションをとっている反応を見たり聞いたりすると、本当に苦労が報われるし、やりがいのある仕事だなと思います。
There are a lot of hardships when making a character, but when you see the players' reactions to communicating with your characters, you are rewarded for your hard work. It's really a job worth doing.
ラストラビリンスの制作はまだ途中です。皆さんに愛される非言語 NPC になるようチームメンバー全員であと少し頑張ります。
Last Labyrinth is still in production. All of us on the team will keep working hard to create a nonverbal NPC that players will love. Okay, that was our talk. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions for Atsuko, I will do my very, very best to translate them for you, but gonna emphasize again, I'm an animator. I'm not a pro. So if you'd go to the mics, if there's any questions, I'm gonna do my best. We'll go from there.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering, beyond creating believable animations, how do we get it so that the players care about the character beyond them just acting in a real way?
Okay, I'm taking notes so that I can translate. Beyond creating believable animations, how do we get it so the players will care about the characters?
Yes, because we can have, even in games where they have very believable motions and interesting personalities, you can still find them very annoying. And that's got to be even harder in a VR game where your player can't move or communicate. So it's got to be even harder.
Okay, let me translate that. まずお話ありがとうございました。で質問は実があるの信じれるのモーションを作る以降で、どうやってプレイヤーをキャラを大切と思われる存在に作成することはどうやってやりますか？例えば他のゲームだと、結構綺麗なアニメーションができているんだけど、ちょっと、目覚まり的なキャラもいるので、なんかどうやってこのキャラ好き、このキャラ大好き、なんか守りたいとかその気持ちどうやって出せてますか？
守りたい。
守りたい。
キャラクター、そのキャラクター的にってこと？
そう。キャラクター
的に。
How do you make them want to feel protected?
どんなキャラクターでも？
Are you talking about any character? Any character, or a character that you want to feel like you want to protect?
Yes, yeah.
はい、守りたいキャラクター。
守りたいキャラクター。難しい。
That's a difficult question. I'm thinking.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
いや喋りたいけど。
I really want to talk about this, but.
やっぱりもうあれ？大丈夫？あれ帰っちゃった。
Where'd she go? Oh no, she's still thinking. She's thinking.
いややっぱりこうどうしても不自然になることが多くて、こうちょっとキャラクター性をこう大きく出そうと思ってこうちょっとなんだっけいろいろアニメーションしてもやっぱりこうゲーム中ねこう全てのアニメーションがこういい感じにこうつながってないとなんかすごくキャラクターそのモーション作ったモーションだけがこう浮き出てしまったりとかすることが多くて、もう全体的にこうさっきのキャラクター制御の話とかもそうだけど、
でも不自然の後。不自然だけではなく、そう愛されるっていうところ。
愛される、やっぱりでも地道に作っていくしかないかなって思ってますね。
So she thought about it. Really, yes, believable animations are very important, but really it's making all of the animations not have any one particular animation stand out among the others. That's what helps to really make them feel alive and not like something that was created by another person. If all of the animations are corrected in a good way, they will feel more alive. But it's very difficult.
でもうまく説明できなかった。
I'm so sorry, I can't explain it very well though. Yeah, okay. Thank you, sorry.
Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
So I will keep my question really short. I'm probably too close to that. So my question is a little bit of a two-parter. So correct, you said you didn't do any motion capture for the animations at this time, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I was very impressed with the iron plate. That really, as you mentioned, she's weak, this or that, so problem with the knee. As you were animating that, did you do any acting sessions? As in, did you all get together and go, "Hey guys, let's mime doing the plate, things like that"? Did you do things like that to help get that idea, or what did you do to think in those terms?
Okay. とても良いプレゼンテーションありがとうございました。まず確認だけど、キャプチャーは使っていないんですよね。
はい、
私の方でもう使ってませんって。で、とても鉄のプレートはとても印象に残りました。それを作る前に何かね自分で動いたりはしましたか？みんなでなんか集めて、じゃあこの動きはどんな風につけましょうっていうセッションとかやりましたか？アクティングとかやりましたか？それとも自分で考えました？ないですよね。
そう、基本なんかあんまりみんなでこういう動きにしようっていうのはあんまりなくて、割と自分の頭の中で考えて動くことが多いです。で、昔はよく自分でこう動いてこう動画ムービーを撮ってそれをこう見てやることもあったんですけど、最近はもう頭の中で想像してつけることが多いですね。
So recently, I actually don't do much acting out physically myself. I actually just kind of do it all in my head. But back when I was first animating, I would act things out, take videos, do things like that. But recently, I've found that I just do it in my head.
ただ作った後でディレクターに見せたり、他の人に見せた時にリアクションがなんかいまいちだったら、なんかリアクション良くなかったなと思ってまたこう作る。
So, but when I show it to other people, I watch their reactions. If their reaction isn't good, like their physical reaction isn't good, then I'm like, maybe I need to work on that again or make some different acting choices.
Thank you very much. That answers my question.
Yeah, you're welcome. ありがとうって。
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the translation and the presentation. That was beautiful. My question is about virtual reality. How often would you get in VR to actually validate your animations?
これすごくいい質問だよ。This is a really, really good question. I'm glad you asked that. プレゼンありがとうございました。あと翻訳ありがとうございました。で、VR についての質問。どの程度の VR の被って自分のモーション確認していますかって。
すごく何回も何回も常に確認してますね。ちょっと簡単にこうざっくりざっくりアニメーションをつけたらもうすぐ VR に出してもう確認して、もうなんとなくのこう動きを見て、それでそのなんていうの大きい動きで OK かどうかを自分で確認してまた詰めてまた出して確認して何回も確認します。
So we check in VR as much as possible. I'm constantly wearing the VR headset. And I do my blocking pass. I'll put that into the game engine. I'll check it in VR. I'll check whether or not it's okay. Then I'll go back to Maya, do a little bit, put it in VR. Go back to Maya, do a little bit, put it in VR. This keeps continuing. I'm constantly in VR.
確認するのはすごい重要だと思ってます。
Checking in VR is extremely important. Now, as Alexis, I'm going to say something. 私も答える。Playing something in Maya and playing something in VR look completely different. It looks beautiful in Maya, and then you put it in VR, and it's like, this is crap. So, check in VR as much as humanly possible. You will get headaches.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hello. I'm the last person in the row, so I was wondering if I could ask something off topic about the game Eco.
イコについての質問聞いてもいいですか？Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I was really impressed with the game. So it was a really unique piece of the gaming history. But I was wondering if the fighting scenes were designed to be in the game at the beginning or added later, because it was a bit, different kind of gameplay, solving puzzles and finding the way out and then fighting. So basically, this is my question.
イコではまずイコはとても歴史に残るゲームだと思っています。で、ファイティングのアクションシーンがあると思うんだけど、そのシークエンスは後に追加されたものですか？その他のシーンとなんか若干雰囲気が違うので、それ後に追加されたものですか？それとも最初から企画したものですか？
アクションのシーン、
ファイティングするシーンがなんか。
ファイティングするシーン。イコが
What scene specifically are you speaking about?
When the black ghost-like
ブ
animation.
ラックのゴーストと、ゲームの後半のことですかね。
And you're talking about at the end of the game?
I'm not sure. I think it was before the end of the game.
中間と。
なんだっけ、夜だとかと、
What-
夜だとかとこう逃げてる時に、
When you're running away with Yorda?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that section. はい、それ。
戦うっていうのは最初からコンセプトであったんですけど、最初はあれ黒い影じゃなくて人型でした。人型、
はい。
人型の兵士だったんだけど、それはいろいろとクオリティとかの問題で黒い影になったって言っていいのかな言っていいのかな
I'm not sure if I can say this, but the concept was of fighting was there at the beginning, but originally they weren't going to necessarily be the black cloud things. They were going to be a different kind of thing, but we weren't happy with how things were looking, so we decided to change it to the black cloud things.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the chance to talking with someone who is in the development team. I never thought that would be possible.
この機会があると思ったことはなかったらすごく嬉しいです。
トランスレーションしてくれてる。
She's thanking me for translating.
Thank you so much.
Don't think about it.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. Sometimes you find as animators that we have to reframe or exaggerate certain parts of our animations to better fit the screen or the scene or the framing we choose. In VR, how does that change? How do you find that you have to exaggerate more or less certain motions?
VR ではまず、プレゼンありがとうございました。で、VR の方ではよくアニメーターとして、アニメーション作るとき、ここをちょっと大げさにしないといけないとか、そういうカメラに合わせてモーションを作ることが多いんですけど、VR の場合は、その大げさのところもっと大げさしないといけないこととかありますか？それとも大げささをちょっと抑えてあげないといけないこととかありますか？
そうですね。そうですね。一つのアクションはちょっと大げさだと大げさどっちかというと抑えて、動きは抑えるけどこうなんていうの体の移動とかの、なんていうかポジションの移動とかの動きは割と大きいと違うな、
まあでも
細かくつけないと情報量が少なく感じる、なんていうか情報量が足りないなって思っちゃう、でもオーバーにすると動きをオーバーにするとちょっと違和感がある。だからどっちかというとオーバーじゃない方に寄せてるなと思ってる。わかる？
わかるよ。So she's not sure how to explain it, but for VR, she does tend to less exaggerate things, try to keep things a little less exaggerated. But the movement of the character, like where they're moving physically in space, tries to give them a little bit more detail to those movements because if they don't have enough movement, like detail, like where they're like physically moving in space, the amount of information on the screen is less and it begins to feel a little lonely or like incomplete.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. わかったかな？
Hello. I really enjoyed the parts about the procedural animation. And I was wondering about, it's very easy for that to end up being on the programmer's table. But did you get a chance to work on that as an animator to control the timing of head look-ats and pointing at things?
まず今日のプロシージャルの部分についてはとても興味深かった、発表してくれてありがとうございます。で、そういう設定とかは基本エンジニアの方で行っていると思うんですけども、アニメーターの方でルカットのスピードとかその辺で操作しましたか？
そうですね。こう腕の IK もこうルックアットの IK もボディの IK とかも、パラメーターは、アニメーターで調整します。あと、加速度スピードとかのパラメーターもこっちで調整します。
Yes, the animators actually are the ones who set all of the parameters for the look-ats and things of that sort, as well as the acceleration speeds for the runs and things like that. We were the ones who set those. We actually have to have an engineer next to us.
でもやっぱりこう分からないこととかがやっぱりあるので、こううまくパラメータを使いこなせない時がやっぱりあるので、そういう時はエンジニアさんとやっぱり一緒にやりますね。
So, but there are a lot of parameters, and I don't fully understand them. So I need to have an engineer there with me to do them. But I set them myself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is that everyone? Okay. And we are hiring. The only catch is you have to be able to speak Japanese. But if you can speak Japanese, come see me. If you have any other questions for either of us, Atsuko does only speak Japanese, so if you have questions specifically for her, please CC me in the email. Our emails are there. And yeah.
今日はどうもありがとうございました。
Thank you. ありがとうございました。